All right, hello everybody. Welcome to UK CORRAL, the podcast that reviews every single comic ever written by a British writer. I'm your co-host Mike Allen. As always, I'm joined by Adamantium.
Miracle.
And of course, Nice Man.
Nicest man in the universe.
That's right. No time for being mean. That's Nice Man.
5 seconds.
Okay, so we're going to talk about a very, very, very important superhero comic here, and one of my personal favorites. Now, I know, Nice Man, you've got a lot to say about this because you were reading comics at the time that this came out, right? So why don't you give us your just brief impression of your experience reading this comic?
Yeah, I was there when Warrior #1 was published.
Okay.
And, of course, I got it. Very daring for British comics because it was a monthly. And, all of us in Britain had been raised on weekly. Even when I first found out that American comics were monthly, I could hardly believe it. I was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
A month? You got to wait a month for the next one?
Right.
But anyway, so they tried, Deskin tried this with Warrior magazine, and you could tell it was a worthy effort, and I had to support it. I think any readers of American comics in Britain had to support Warrior. I hope they did, but it was not like it was around for a very long time. Anyway, the cover that was just up, of course, is the reprint by Eclipse, and in color, because the original Warrior story is in black and white. It was one thing to have a British monthly superhero comic, but another thing for it to be in color. No, it could only be in black and white. And I think that was very unfortunate because even though people like me who had been reading American color comics for quite a while, it just felt like a bit of a step back to have it in black and white. Sure. And I think seeing the reprints, the Eclipse reprints that appeared later in color, and you could see just how good it could be in color. Even though I'm sure Garry Leach did his best to draw, with black and white contrast in mind. Mm-hmm. So my impression was, without really knowing much about Alan Moore, just how good it was. How good it was. It was almost like without even trying. There was nothing kind of pretentious about it. The art, I love Garry Leach's art. Mm-hmm. Perfect combination. Alan Moore writing, Garry Leach's art. And I knew immediately, wow, that was really good. And why was it so good? If we to state the obvious, well, Garry Leach's art is beautiful and convincing at the same time. But Alan Moore immediately, and he's young Alan Moore, right? He's like 25. But his characterization is so sharp, so sharp, I think it puts like other writers to shame. And everything that comes out in Alan Moore writing stems from the character. And there's a backstory, of course, to this whole first episode of Miracleman. We know, the backstory of the revival of the 1950s Marvel Man character. Mm-hmm. But it's all about the character, and yet it's hard to say how can that be? There's all this backstory and everything else to go with the 1950s. Yes, but the plot, the backstory never leaves the character. Never. You never feel like this is somebody who's being put into a story. The story emanates from the character. And Alan Moore's characterization, I think, is to use a cliche, second to none. And even when he does have to fill in backstory, context, and this and that, it's always so intelligently done. So we take this really dopey 1950s Marvel Man story, which, as Alan Moore said in a text piece, it makes sense for the 1950s. No, that's his character. No, the Miracleman character said said, yes, it makes sense in the
Right.
1950s, but not in the 1980s. And yeah, there's definitely truth to that. But I think, who is there better than Alan Moore, who says, you know what, I can take a character like Marvel Man, as dopey as they come, a Shazam ripoff, and I can make it ultra sharp and intelligent, and it just is. It just is. And or we know that he did this too with Captain Britain. Captain Britain was such a lame kind of cliche character by Chris Claremont and Herb Trimpe. And by the time Alan Moore had finished with him, he'd stripped him down to the mere fragments of bone and then recreated him into a compelling character. So, I should stop here because I'm being too nice. No, I'm not being nice. This is the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, isn't it?
I agree. I'll go ahead, Adam.
Mike, I just wanted to say, just give me some context, because I think sometimes we get in our little comic bubble, and sometimes we forget. Maybe some people don't understand what this background is that we're referring to. So essentially, Marvelman was, as you pointed out, a Shazam / Captain Marvel ripoff. Essentially, what was happening was Fawcett Comics at the time in the 1950s. There was a cessation of superhero comics coming through to the UK. And because of the weekly format, they needed more stories. And because Captain Marvel was so popular, they decided we need a character that's like this. So I forget who it was, but the head of Fawcett at the time contacted Mick Anglo, I believe his name was, to create... Anglo, thank you.
Anglo, like Anglo-Saxon.
Like Anglo-Saxon, yes. And commissioned him to make this character, which was exceedingly popular, but due to a number of different factors, including this shifting of how comics were distributed to the UK, which allowed more American comics to come through into the 1960s, a pending copyright infringement lawsuit, and just waning popularity, the character kind of went into obscurity. And that is when, with Warrior #1, it was decided to revise this character. And it was a very bold move, and bold not always in the best sense, because I believe the character was revised without consent from the original creator. Des Skin opted to revive the character without actually contacting Anglo to get permission to do that. Regardless of whether that's fully true or not, both parties dissent about the factuality of it. In the end, what we had was Alan Moore's first real showing of an Alan Moore comic. And it makes sense that this issue also has the first part of V for Vendetta in it as well, which shows the first truly mature Alan Moore story. And while I do think we're going to see echoes of what he can do to deconstruct the superhero genre in works such as Swamp Thing and especially Watchmen, this is the blueprint. These are the bones. And the reason everyone, I think, has talked about this as this legendary comic is that it's the first real instance in a publication without the intent of satire or some farcical element, really tried to deconstruct the idea of the superhero and a particular character as well. So with that said, I have to say this was touted as legend for a long while because due to the legality of using this character, their name and their likeliness, it traded rights, owners many times until it finally was able to be officially released. Eclipse did reissues of it where Marvelman's name was changed to Miracleman because of that lawsuit that was issued from DC Comics. Or maybe it was Marvel Comics at that point, now that I'm thinking of it. And then the irony now is that Marvel Comics has actually made hardcover editions of Alan Moore's run, which he has chosen to have his name removed from. He's not credited as a writer. It is simply the original writer or the original artist. That's the title given to the person responsible for writing this. These are beautiful renditions with some new coloring, so it's not quite exactly what you got in the Eclipse comics, but it is the first true available version of these comics. I think Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, or Nice Man if I'm wrong, but I think in about 20 or 25 years, it was out of official legal publication.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a lot to say too, but I want to point out that I first read this maybe in 1990-ish. So it would have been about 8 years after it was first published. And I read it before I read Watchmen. So before this, I'd only read maybe Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, maybe an issue of Swamp Thing. But when I read this, it just blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. And to the point that it was, I think it was like Paul said, he puts everyone else to shame. That's how good his writing is, and still continues to be. And so now that being said, the one thing I want to say is about 10 years ago, I used to be part of a comic book club in Ferndale, Michigan, and we tried to, and we rotated through different picks and graphic novels and old stuff, new stuff. When we got to Miracleman, there was a clear divide between old readers and young readers. The older readers like me put this stuff on a pedestal. The younger readers were indifferent to it. And I think it's because it has been strip mined and imitated by so many other comics, whether it be The Authority or Ultimates or Civil War or anything. I mean, even going through this, I noticed at least two direct things that I think Peter David has ripped off. And Peter David is one of my favorite writers, but I think that this was like, because it wasn't widely available in the US, I think, the more scrutinizing creators, like someone like Peter David or someone like that, would have dug this up and found it and used it as like a template for what they were doing. And then later on, Grant Morrison would have done the same thing. And then lesser writers like Mark Miller would have done the same thing with lesser effect. But anyway, the point is that to someone like me, I always have to explain to people to read it in the context of when it was first published. Because when it was first published, like Niceman said, there was nothing like it.
And, as a little bit of a younger reader going into this, I mean, I first encountered this years and years ago. I procured the comic through certain means. I'll go that far before it was legally republished. But there is something to be said about a generational divide, because I do think you're right. A lot's been copied from this, even from Alan Moore. I think this, as I said, is the blueprint for what he would do in a lot of his future writings. Swamp Thing, I think Watchmen are the two biggest examples for me. But what I find very interesting about this is, because we've seen these story beats and we've seen the idea of the deconstructed superhero, the idea of what would a real person be like in a superhero universe, what would a superhero be like in a real world universe, quote unquote, with attention to detail, characterization, mature themes. I don't think it's understood as being as radical as it really is. And I look at it the same way I look at reading old noir fiction, or even like hard-boiled detective fiction like a Raymond Chandler. I will admit, going back to it, while you can see the craft and you understand the importance of it, yes, with the deluge of detective stories and stuff that imitates and was inspired by it, it loses some of its potency. But as Mike said, we do need to bring ourselves into the context of what it was like, this comic being released at that time in the early 80s. And I think maybe at the end of reviewing these issues, we can discuss if we think it still holds relevance to this day. I'd love to have that discussion, but I think first, of course, we have to go through these 11 issues of Warrior,
right?
Also with a bonus.
Yeah, and I have to point out that we are going to be going through the black and white reprints, but we're also intermixed with color pages. So if you're confused, that's what's happening here. And we have to point out that even though these stories first appeared in Warrior #1, when they were reprinted by Eclipse Comics, which is this series here, I believe it was Des Skin decided to start the reprints, or maybe it was Kat Ironwood. She would have probably decided, because she was the editor at Eclipse, that she decided to start the series with a reprint of a 1950s story that I believe was modified by Alan Moore. I believe. And I did not reread it for this reading, but I've read it before. So who would like to volunteer to quickly tell our viewers what happens in this story?
I will.
Nice man. All right.
And if I screw up, you can jump in.
And you can I'm just going to flip through these and just be as brief as you like.
Well, there's a bunch of goons in the far future, which is the 1980s, and they're very technologically advanced, and they decide, you know what, it's tough being like a dictatorial goon in the 1980s. Let's go back to the 1950s and beat up those simpletons because they've got no technology and we can easily lord it over them. So they do go back in time and they start, beating people up. But then before long, they encounter the Marvel Man family, which is Marvel Man, Young Marvel Man, and who's the other one?
Kid Marvel Man.
Marvel Man, Young Marvel Man, Kid Marvel Man. And they soon, start fighting back and, basically beat them up. I think that's about it. Did I miss anything?
Okay, I don't know because I didn't reread it. I have read it before, as I said, but I did want to point out some of the details were modified. I believe the original year was not 1982, but I could be wrong. But I believe that's.
Oh, where the bad guys are from?
Yes, I believe that was a different year, and they just changed it to make it match the timeline of the current story.
Right, so they did 1980s, yeah. Okay.
Right.
And then, of course, there is the Nietzsche quote at the end, the
yes.
Nietzsche quote, which I have to admit is very harrowing. You have this very goofy, nonsensical story that's just pure pablum. And then you have this quote at the end with this intense closing shot.
But this is not from the original story, this page.
This one's a modification. And how brilliant that is, taking this very seemingly banal opening and contrasting it with this very dark, ominous close-up. Mike, I'm not sure if you would agree, but there's something almost Lynchian about it with this contrast between the purity and kind of naivety of the early Golden Age story with this sudden close-up and this Nietzsche quote. There's just something very harrowing about it that I think perfectly sets the tone for what's to come.
I think you're right. Yeah. And I also want to point out, this is not zooming in on a character's face. This is zooming in on a cartoon drawing. The fact that if you look at this top image here, they're zooming in, and you can see this is just a drawing of an eyeball. It's not like the detail gets, finer on the eyeball. So that's an important distinction, I think, right?
You can find the matrix points, yeah.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite pages in comics history.
Mm-hmm.
To come from that dopey 1950 story to this last page where, it's like you said, it's completely ominous, completely. And it's so wonderfully ironic because we've got the smiling, blonde-haired hero's face. And yes, let's get closer and closer and closer to that eye. What are we going to find deep inside? For me, I would, every now and again, I see pages that I think I would love to frame. I'd love to have a collection of framed individual pages, framed splash pages, and I'd probably drive Kim crazy. I'd have them all around the house, and she'd probably move out. But that page is perfection, absolute perfection. The layout, the execution, the use of the few words, and the attribution to Nietzsche. It's just 10 out of 10. That's a perfect comic book page.
Now, before I say anything else, I have to say Miracleman is one of my absolute favorite comics. Top 2, we'll say, okay? Or top 2 or 3. However, when Marvel reprinted this series, they made a lot of mistakes that I'm not going to go into. But one of the things is they included a lot of these old 1950s material, okay? And I believe that even with this Eclipse series, this might be a little bit too confusing for a new reader to read 11 pages of this stuff without knowing, because if you're a 2025 reader and you're reading this, you're thinking, is this Miracleman? Like, is it just 1950s retro? So in a perfect world, I would have made this story 3 to 5 pages just to set up the premise, get through it, and then jump to the Alan Moore stuff. What do you guys think?
I don't really think much.
No, you don't agree?
I'm not sure, honestly, exactly what you're saying.
I'm saying like the idea of starting off this Alan Moore reimagining of Miracleman with this 1950 story is a good idea.
Yes,
But if I were to adapt this into a movie, let's just say, if I were to make the audience sit through 11 minutes of, like, let's just say someone went to go see a Christopher Nolan Batman movie, and then you made them sit through 11 minutes of Adam West Batman, I think the audience is going to kind of be confused and say, well, what exactly am I watching? Whereas if you make them sit through 45 seconds of it, just to say, this is the Batman this is who you thought Batman was, this is the new Batman. I think we need less of this. Put it that way.
Well,
I say no.
Okay.
And my perspective is, to agree with Nice Man, I do feel when I view things, I'm less critical in the sense of thinking, oh, I would do this differently to make it a stronger story. Whereas what is being conveyed by what's actually here? And from that, I can say it's either tripe or there's something to it. I brought up Lynch before. Have you ever seen Inland Empire?
Yes.
Okay, and you've seen, obviously, Mulholland Drive?
Yeah, I love it. I love that movie.
Both those films feature very, how should I say, saccharine, very Hollywood musical opening segments or, near entry points that really, I think, trick the audience or lull them into something where the shakeup happening really is more impactful because of that. I do agree. If we're looking at this as like a Christopher Nolan Batman film or even a Marvel film, like tonally, maybe you could get the point across a little bit more succinct, but I like that it plays with this.
Mm-hmm.
I like that it lulls you in. I do think this makes it a challenge. For an example, what you gave with your comic club that you were part of, where maybe people reading it, they're like, what is this 15 minutes of this golden age like slop? I don't need this. But, this is why I think sometimes the right book doesn't always reach the right audience. And sometimes the wrong reader approaches a great book because you need to have a little bit of patience with this book.
You mean like the friend who I suggested Being John Malkovich to, who couldn't even get past the credits and just ejected the tape, wouldn't finish it? Like that.
That's an example, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not mad. Anyway, I'm not bitter. Okay, so how about this? I'll summarize chapter 1, if that's okay.
Before we go on, can I ask something?
Sure.
In hindsight, isn't it interesting that when we look at the very first issue of Warrior, which is the cover being in color, it features Axel press button, not Miracle Man, not V for Vendetta. Miracle Man, the only allusion to Miracle Man is a little bit in the bottom left corner, a silhouette with a question mark, a hero reborn. Why did they choose Axel press button, the psychotic cyborg? Why not that? I wonder if Deskin was worried about, the legality, like you said, that would draw more attention to it if it was on the cover.
As far as I know, I think it was just to build the suspense, to keep him a mystery. But yeah,
and Vendetta might have been like, is this some kind of Guy Fawkes special edition? So maybe, it's a fun cover. I think it's a great cover.
Yeah, it is a good cover, but you're right. Like, even historically, it would be more memorable if it was Miracleman on the cover, right?
Oh, yeah, because that's what we'd be saying. Look, it's the very first appearance. Look at this.
Right. Okay, so let's jump to chapter 1, book 1, chapter 1. So we open up with a truck being driven down a highway. We get a nice little opening here from Alan Moore. Because, again, this book is 1982. There's narration, and there's thought balloons, and there's speech balloons. So in the sodium-lit hour before dawn, the great trucks roll north. Some carry breakfast cereal, and some carry ball bearings. Some are empty, and some are not. And we cut away from that scene to Michael Moran, who's having dreams. And he's having dreams of Miracleman, or sorry, in this version, Marvel Man, his original name. And I'm not sure if we want to spoil anything, but anyone who's watched this review will know what we're talking about. But he's essentially dreaming about the last mission of Miracleman, of the Miracleman family, which was Miracleman, young Miracleman, and Kid Miracleman, flying into this sort of spaceship. and to confront this danger. And just as they're about to go in, Miracleman hesitates and stops. The other two continue, and young Marvel Man is killed in kind of like an explosion, where we see that he's kind of half human and half superhero. And then supposedly Kid Miracleman, and forgive me if I mix them up, Kid Miracleman dies. Then Michael Moran wakes up, and he's a middle-aged man living with his wife. He gets up, he talks to his wife, he goes off to work on the train, and he's kind of complaining in his mind about, he's trying to remember something about his dream, something about a word, a magic word. What's the word? He keeps thinking back, but he can't think of the word. So as he's walking to work, he walks past a demonstration against radiation. And as he's walking through the crowd, just at that moment, there's an attack by a group of terrorists. And they round up all the people and they bring them inside, and they're holding them hostage. And while he's inside, they also, I believe they injure or knock over someone. But as Michael Moran's down on the ground, he looks up and he sees the title of the name of the place that he's at through the window. And he sees that it says, what is it? Lakes.
Oh, yeah.
Lakesmere Atomic Power something. And that's where he sees Komoda. So then the next page, he doesn't shout it, he whispers it, Komoda. Lightning flashes, there's a big explosion, the terrorists are standing there. Steve, man, are you all right? Like, we heard that bang, and who the hell are you? Me, I'm Marvel Man. I remember now. Marvel Man takes out the terrorists and then flies up into the sky and says, I'm Marvel Man, I'm back. And then it says the beginning. And that is the end of chapter 1, and that is, I believe, 11 pages long. Mm-hmm. Maybe 10. So anyway, I will save my comments for later, but Adamantium, what's your impression of this opening chapter?
Well, it's very hard to call anything from this because it really is just the introduction. I feel the idea of calling these books is very appropriate because these are less issues of an ongoing serial, but actual chapters to a set narrative. So, it's kind of hard. It will be like saying, can you review chapter 1 of A Tale of Two Cities? Sure. But, it sets up a lot. It sets up this mystery of who Mike Moran is, the possibilities, and then it just culminates with his realization, with that brilliant moment of him seeing the reflection of the title of the atomic facility. So he's seeing the text backwards. That's actually quite genius. It's a great setup. In terms of, a narrative drive, I will say I really like Miracleman, Marvel Man, whatever you will call it as a whole. I do think the first book is the weakest because there's some contrivances here just to get the plot going. The random chances of this terrorist attack just happening where Mike Moran happens to be going around is a bit too coincidental for me. It seems contrived, but easily forgivable because, again, for me, it's just setting the plot in motion. And I think the strength of this comic is actually going to happen in the next issue with that characterization that Nice Man was talking about. But it sets up a lot for a good story that's about to take place.
Okay, Nice Man, what do you think?
It's one of those occasions where I say exactly the same thing. We forgive Alan Moore for throwing in, the standard terrorists. I mean, something has to set this in motion. I wonder what else it could have been. If we take out the terrorists, what could he have replaced it with?
I mean, it could have been like in Superman, it could have been a mugging. It could have been something very straightforward, right? Like something simple. Yeah. It could have been anything.
It could have been something simple. But, it's still wonderfully dramatic, isn't it? When
yes.
He sees the word, but it's written in reverse, and then he says what he says, and then there's the action, there he's standing, and with the revelation of everything, it's very chilling, I think.
Mm-hmm. Again, I always have to preface it by saying this is one of my absolute favorite comics. The only thing I would change, I think, I know that that he's limited to 10 pages, But in a perfect world, I think there would have been more time between him waking up and then remembering the magic word. I wish there could have been some time where we see him going about his day, we see him with his wife, we see him eating dinner, something, and then eventually, because really there's only a few, 2 or 3 pages between him waking up and then remembering the word, so that makes it a little bit less dramatic. But otherwise, again, putting this in the context of 1982, within one panel, you can see the level of skill of Alan Moore versus other writers working at the time. On this page, I know that the original story was in black and white, but on this page, it really brings out how skilled Garry Leach is. I really love Garry Leach, and I think one of the things I like about Garry Leach is that I don't know anything else he's done, so I associate him exclusively with Miracleman.
Mhm.
You know, so he really is. I mean, I love almost all the artists that worked on Miracleman, but he really is the definitive artist for me. He's just great. Look at this beautiful splash page of Miracleman flying out of away from the spaceship here. That's great. Again, because it's only 10 pages, everything's condensed, so we see this long shot of Miracleman right here, like floating, and then the other two here, and then the shot of is that Kid Miracleman or Young Miracleman?
Young Miracleman.
Young Miracleman. It's just it's all of this stuff is good. Mm-hmm. And then again, this is a British comic, so now we're seeing some partial nudity, which you'd not have seen in an American comic. But right, but in only 2 pages, look at what we've got. We've got him waking up from it. We've got him the full dream, waking up, and he's already on his way to work.
And Mike, if I may say, I think the big thing here, I mean, the art is gorgeous. You know, it's an interesting setup, but the prose, I always go back to Alan Moore's writing as an example. Just on that page where it's the dream sequence, there's this great, I would just say a stanza where he's describing seeing the attack, the explosion, what happens to young Miracleman. He sees his friend, the one in red. Something bad is happening to him. First he flickers, a strobing Doppler image against the snow. That's incredible prose. That's poetry. Mm-hmm. You're not getting this in your DC Marvel Drek at this time.
I agree 100%. And there's a lot of sequences like that.
Mm-hmm. This may be one of the reasons why Warrior didn't last that long. Because most British kids, as I said, they were used to weekly comic books, and just short strips, and they were mainly fun strips. There were other ones which I really loved. They weren't all kind of goofy, funny ones, but there was nothing of this level.
I think this also reminds me, and this is only something I realized in the last couple of years, especially from doing this podcast, is that I really do love comics, and I don't want to complain about modern comics, but I went through a phase where I remember reading Ed Brubaker's Captain America, and he's a good writer, but his Captain America went from being really good to being, I just got to fill pages, to the point that it felt like when you got to the end of the issue, he just ran out of space. In this is the complete opposite. You've got 10 pages, and he's got enough story for a limited series. I'm exaggerating, but you get my point, though, right? There's just so much story here, and there could be more. But anyway, we got a lot to talk about. So do you want to jump to Warrior number 2?
Yes, I will.
Okay, and Adam, you can summarize this one.
Yeah, so this one, we see a reconciliation, a return of, this time, Marvelman to Liz, who is the wife of Mike Moran. And at first, even though he has the same visage or the same mien, she doesn't recognize him. His body is like a god, she says. He's sparkling. So she's wondering, who is this strange man? What is he doing in her house? And eventually he convinces her it's him, or somewhat Mike Moran. There's still this ambiguity about who Miracleman is compared to Mike Moran. Regardless, he starts telling her about who he was, that he was this great hero in the 1950s, and he would fight all sorts of ridiculous superpowered beings. His exploits were well known, and then he describes what had happened. He describes the big attack, the explosion, I should say, in that space station that caused the fatality of his peers. As far as he knows, neither young Miracleman nor Kid Miracleman survived that attack. And Liz brings up some interesting points. Well, if you were so prominent and you were this big hero in the 50s, how come I never heard of you? How come I've never heard of these situations? In this universe so far, as we're aware, superheroes don't exist. This is still the stuff of funny pages. So even Mike Moran slash Miracleman is thinking, well, that is interesting. But he goes on telling this story, very emphatically declaring this is what happened. She starts laughing. She starts laughing at the names he's providing, at the names that he's giving these characters like Young Nasty Man and Kid Miracle Man. And she's guffawing to the point where he slams his fist down into the ground, basically just smashing the wood beneath his fingers, saying, "This is not a joke. This was my life." And this is that characterization Nice Man was talking about, where we actually see this existential dilemma happening for this character, where he understands on some level this is improbable. What I see as my history, as my past, can't be real, but it is real to me. And this attempted reconciliation between these two people who were never really a couple, because as is implied in this conversation and as is going to be articulated later, Marvel Man and Mike Moran are actually different people. And this creates a lot of questions and themes to ask about identity, about how you know somebody, how you don't, about desire. But the issue ends after this discussion about who they are and where they're going to go forward from here, with this young man inside a professional looking office smashing down a TV saying, "Marvel Man, he's back to spoil everything." And that's how that issue ends.
Well, I love this issue, or this chapter, or whatever you want to call it. This is 10 pages of just two characters talking, and it really it opens up your eyes to everything. Like I said, I read this when I was 13 maybe, and even though it had been 8 years since it came out, I was still at the age where I was taking superhero comics very, very seriously and very literally. So when I read this, it was almost like someone snapping their fingers, when you're hypnotized and you kind of wake up and realize, oh my God, he's right. This is all ridiculous. Young Nasty Man, Kid Miracle Man, Miracle Dog, whatever. And you realize, of course it's ridiculous, but it's a brilliant deconstruction. And it's not just that, because there are some critics of this. Like, I'm sure you know, Paul, that Jim Shooter was not a fan of Miracleman and Watchmen. John Byrne was not a fan, and I think they saw it as a cynical deconstruction, which you could argue it is. But besides whether it's cynical or not, it's so well done. It's so intelligent. The characterization is so well done. The art is so good. So, I mean, unfortunately, this did lead to a lot of inferior imitators, but I as its own thing, I still love this.
Jim Shooter and John Byrne would have wished to have produced.
Right, exactly.
Ooh, not necessarily. Jim Shooter, I think he was the one that turned down Marvel Man from Marvel Comics, because he said, well, if we allow you to publish this character, Marvel Man, he's going to represent Marvel. Marvel's going to be Marvel Man. And we can't have a British superhero represent Marvel.
I think it was more than that.
Oh, there was definitely more than that, but there was,
yeah.
That was the inclination. That was definitely what was said.
Right.
I just want to touch upon something you said, though, Mike, and I do agree. We've used this term deconstruction to deconstruct the idea of the hero. Basically, this is breaking apart the sort of tropes and concepts that you have about a superhero narrative that you take for granted, and actually giving a repositioning of these tropes to examine them, to understand, what do these mean? What sort of themes can we take out of this? Does it make sense for this to happen? And if not, what does it mean? What does it mean that we want to have these power fantasies with these strong men going around punching lizard people? That's a deconstruction. This isn't just making things dark and edgy and having blood and guts. That's Mark Millar. Millar doesn't deconstruct, because that involves a type of examination of the character and the story you're telling. This is where the story gets great. This second chapter is the sign that this is going to be a great book, because it starts doing that. It asks questions, and it doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't treat the audience like idiots. It lets you think on your own and come to some conclusions for yourself.
Great point. Nice man. What do you think about this chapter?
There are three things I want to say, and I hope I can remember all three. I mean, after I get past the first two, I might say, what was that third one?
Okay.
There's a touch of Thor about this, Don Blake and Thor with the Mike Moran and Miracleman. They are the same, but they aren't the same. Another thing is that a stereotypical comics editor would say, what the hell is this? You've got 10 pages of people talking. Where's the action? We want action. The readers want to see action, just like how all the Marvel team-ups used to be so contrived. The two heroes had to have an excuse to have a punch-up, and then they could find out that they didn't need to punch each other up and they could then team up. Well, this is, I think, a perfect example. When you have good writing, you have good writing. We don't need punch-up. We just need compelling, absolutely compelling characterization and story. And I remember, like, when I read this thinking, yes, she's right when she says, but this is ridiculous. Young miracle man, nasty man, this is ludicrous. And I thought, yeah, she's right. So in a sense, I think I had an inkling when I read it that wasn't real, that 50s stuff. There's more to it than that. She's right. It's too absurd for words. There's more to this story than what it seems. Yes, he's saying, don't make fun of my life. This is my life. This is what we did. But no, there's more to the story. And because, in hindsight, we know because it's Alan Moore, of course there's more to the story. So Alan Moore is going to handle this, brilliantly. But just having those two characters exchange, the comments and the reactions, I found completely compelling. I didn't care that there wasn't some great punch up or whatever. No, just give me good writing. You see, and I've already forgotten now what was the third.
While you're thinking of that, I'm just gonna say one of the things I love about the art is how black the blacks are. Like these pages right here, like these panels, I love this. Absolutely love this. And this is also something I've been insisting for 40 years. I like the 3-color comic book color scheme. I'm not saying there are some exceptions, like some of the later stuff with a little bit of gradation and shading is fine. I can't stand the late 90s trend of making everything this gray wash. I can't stand it. One of the most unique things about comic books is this right here. Cyan, yellow, red. Like, that's what I want to see. Or magenta, or whatever it is. But that's what I want to see. I want to see those solid colors. I love that about comic books. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out. Like, look at this shot. Look at this shot. It's almost all black, but we can see the outline because he's backlit, the blue. That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah,
anyway.
Yeah. And the conclusion here, with the violence of the character who's reacting to Miracleman being back, you just feel the, what can we say, the oozing evil. It oozes.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so whose turn is it next?
Yours, I think.
Mine, okay. Okay, so number 3, Warrior number 3, still not getting, he got number 2 on the cover, but not number 3. Okay, so now in number 3, we get some gratuitous nudity here with...
gratuitous?
No, I'm kidding, I'm teasing. Mike Moran, what's his wife's name? Liz. She answers the phone. I just read this yesterday. Oh, so they go to a, quote, meeting because they've been called by Johnny Bates.
Yes.
Johnny Bates wants to meet them. He wants to find out what's going on. So we get a sequence where Michael Moran...
We should probably say, because we didn't even mention this, Johnny Bates is a civilian identity of Kid Miracleman. So he finds out Kid Miracleman or Johnny Bates is alive.
Yes. Okay, so yeah. So in the last issue, the person at the end who smashed the TV or whatever he smashed, that was Kid Miracleman, Johnny Bates. And now at the beginning of this story, he's calling to basically saying he wants to catch up with Michael Moran. So they go to his office and they find out that he's basically this successful business mogul, and he's got this kind of like skyscraper headquarters here in London. And so they go up, and you can see all this funky, modernist architecture, and we get this excellent shot introducing Johnny Bates right here. Like, look at that expression on his face, right? Just excellent art. So they're sitting there and they're talking and they're reminiscing about that last mission they went on together when Michael Moran thought that Kid Miracleman was killed, but obviously he wasn't. And it turns out that he claims that, well, he turned back into Johnny Bates and he's been living this whole time, just as a normal person. And then there's a point where he has to leave the room, and then Michael Moran and Liz are talking, and Liz says, so you haven't seen him since he was 16. Has he changed much? And Michael Moran says, yes, he has. He has changed a lot. And then the next scene, they get back together, and it's absolutely brilliant because Michael Moran basically lays it all out for Johnny Bates and tells him flat out. He basically says, I've been listening to you talk and I've been watching, and I kind of have a theory, and I think you're still Kid Miracleman. I don't think you did change back. And I think you've been living the past 20 years or whatever as Kid Miracleman. And he's sitting and he's giving his whole explanation for why he believes this. And Kid Miracleman doesn't say a word. And then instinctively, Michael Moran, right in front of Liz, decides to shove Johnny Bates over the ledge of this skyscraper because he believes his theory so deeply. And she screams. But what happens? Kid Miracleman doesn't fall because Kid Miracleman is back. Michael Moran's theory was right. He is Kid Miracleman, and he still has his powers. And
so if he got it wrong,
he'd be dead. He'd be
Johnny
dead.
Bates goes splat.
Yep.
Then I guess you'd say, oh.
That would make for a much different comic in the end.
Yeah, it would have. It would have.
Michael Moran arrested for murder. Next issue.
It's funny because of the three we've read so far, this is my favorite so far. I think this is brilliant. But I think it has a serious flaw that I'll talk about later, but I really love this issue. Adamantium, what do you think?
Yeah, it's funny you said that because actually of all of them, this is probably, and I mean collected in what we're going to discuss, my least favorite.
Okay.
And it's not because there's anything egregiously wrong with anything. It's just I don't like the reveal.
Wow.
I think Michael Moran just kind of positing this idea out loud is very dumb. If you do think he's this guy and he has this power and you are suspect that maybe there's some malicious intent behind him, why would you make him call his bluff? Why wouldn't you keep this information and these cards close to your heart? I feel this was just a bad reveal, and I don't like the expositing that's happening with it. I'd rather some internal dialogue, more clues to the audience that something's off. I think it's spelled out a little bit too much. And with that said, I feel it's the one instance in this run where Alan Moore's spoon-feeding the audience a little bit with this reveal. I like what's going to happen later, but this, for me, is the one criticism I have, which is a shame because otherwise the mechanisms are good. I like the reunion. I like the assumption that after this explosion, both plummeted back to Earth, both reverted to their civilian identities and forgot who they were. And that would be a great plot point to pull the audience along until this reveal. Although technically it was already spoiled in the previous chapter, so what can you do?
I will say one thing, that for a comic as realistic as it is, you have to have a little bit of suspension of disbelief, because one of the things about him showing all his cards is he's still Michael Moran. Mm-hmm. So he could have been killed. If these characters are as powerful as they are depicted throughout the rest of the story, Kid Miracleman could have killed him instantly without him even having time to say the magic word. So I'll give you that. However, I like everything else. But I'll keep my other criticism until after we hear from Nice Man. What do you think, Nice Man?
I really like the opening with the very tasteful rendition, the naked Liz, because what it tells us is that writer and artist are not dumbing this down. They're
Okay.
not patronizing us. It's not meant for little kiddies, and little kiddies would not be buying a monthly magazine that costs, quite a bit, as opposed to Dandy and Beano and stuff like that. And I appreciated it. I thought, okay, this is real storytelling. They respect their readers, and that's wonderful. Also, with the art on the first page, in the panel with the phone. And who drew this? Was it Alan Davis?
No, this is Garry Leach.
Still Garry Leach. Okay. And who I love to quiz you guys every podcast. Very tedious, I know, but in that small panels, just slim, small panel with the phone ringing, whose art does it remind you of?
I'm still here.
I'm thinking of two particular American artists.
Are you talking about the red phone at the bottom?
Yes. The ringing red phone. Doesn't it remind you of any particular American artist? Because I see that, and the lines.
Okay.
Oh yeah, those are the lines of.
Can I guess? Marshall Rogers.
Marshall Rogers, number one, and number two would be Walt Simonson.
Okay.
Because of the sound, the letters.
Sure.
Sound effect going across. So that's a beautiful opening page. Look at the inventiveness with the panel layout. Look how narrow those top panels are.
Right.
Almost don't even count. They're so slender. But it takes us in step by step. And then we have the wonderful shot of Liz. And again, I can't stress enough, this is Alan Moore and Garry Leach telling us we respect you. We're not writing down to you. We're not patronizing you. We're just trying to tell a good tale. And so this is how it goes. Now, further in, I don't share your view, Adam, in this one, I'm afraid. Mm-hmm. I think up to now we've always shared each other's view, but I don't here. I tell you why, because when Michael Moran, puny Michael Moran, kind of, right? Not too puny, but not Miracleman. He's standing next to that buff that you can just feel that height. Look at his height next to Michael Moran, right?
Right here? That's a great shot. Yeah.
That's right. Look how intimidating. Look how creepy he looks. Mm-hmm. And so Michael Moran is standing there saying, like you said, what if you didn't die, you Kid Miracle, and you're thinking inside yourself, no, stop now, don't say another word, don't, no. So I like it because as a reader inside it made me say, no, not a good idea, no. So I liked it for that reason, a kind of dramatic irony. I understand the logic of what you said, absolutely. Don't disagree with the logic. But as a reader, I enjoyed that sense of doom, imminent danger, like spider senses going off, or robot in Lost in Space, danger, Will Robinson, danger.
Yeah. I will say this. I think maybe it's just the way it's presented. If maybe Mike Moran was thinking out loud and he was overheard, and then Kid Miracleman came in and said, "Oh, you think this may have happened?" and he was kind of caught and forced to reveal his thoughts. I just think him expositing in front of Kid Miracleman, to me, it just feels like it is feeding along an audience. But I do appreciate what you're saying. I do think there is a tension that is being built here. I cannot argue with that. I do want to talk about one thing very quickly before I forget about it. At the top of this issue, Liz is recounting her night spent with Marvelman. She's talking about, engaging in wonderful, salacious acts with him. And the way that she describes it, this is why I didn't like that reveal, because I thought early on the prose was so great. Not only does Alan Moore use this wonderful language as she's recounting her tryst with Marvelman, she's using language, never saying these words, but presenting it as if she just had an affair. And that is brilliant, because again, that implies to the reader there is a difference between Mike Moran and Miracleman but is not spelt out. That will be accentuated later on as we're reading the story, but I really love that subtlety of it.
Yeah, I mean, it really is something because he is Mike Moran, but he's the new and improved Mike Moran. Where does that leave poor original Mike Moran?
It was not a pleasure model, so there we go.
So now I'm going to say the one thing I didn't like about this issue. Now, this is early Alan Moore, but he's also already brilliant. But one of the things about Alan Moore is that he gives his artists explicit, detailed instructions on exactly what to draw in each panel, right? He has more control than the average writer. But in this issue, I was really put off by the continuous use of this establishing shot of this building. Because, you know, in a TV or a movie, it's almost like to go back to it so many times feels like coverage. Like, oh, we have nothing to cut to. So look at this. We're going to cut to it 1, 2, 3 times on one page. Whereas I feel like those panels could have been replaced by different shots of Michael Moran and Johnny Bates. It's a minor detail, but if you go to the next page, look, we see it again.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a minor quibble, but it just feels like either Moore wasn't as focused on his visual storytelling at the time, or I'm not sure what.
We should ask him.
Yeah, we should ask him next time we see him. Okay, so that's enough about that issue. Let's jump to the next one. Okay, so I believe Nice Man, it's your turn, correct?
Unfortunately.
Do your best.
I love the fact that it's a summer special because, you know, when I was a kid, we always loved the summer specials. You know, the special Christmas annuals.
Sure.
And the summer specials. Yeah. So
I have a couple of those Transformers annuals, the hardcovers, right?
Yes.
Those are great. Anyway.
Yeah. So well, what do I remember? No.
Okay.
I don't remember enough.
Let's just quickly tell the viewers, this chapter was not included in the Eclipse reprints because it's not part of the narrative. And so I did not read it until only a few years ago. Nice Man, did you want to talk about this one, or Adam, do you want to take this one?
I think Adam, if he doesn't mind, because...
Is Adam frozen? Oh, I thought you were frozen for a minute, Adam.
No, I'm just pensive in contemplation.
You were giving us the Johnny Bates look there. Okay.
Oh, my goodness.
Is this... Steve Dillon did the
art. Steve Dillon. Yep.
Yeah.
I would say this counts as an aside. This isn't really fully a chapter in this narrative because we're cutting in the middle of the narrative thread. But basically, Marvelman is engaged with a warp smith, who is essentially this entity that can travel through dimension and time. And they need to recharge for this battle. So in order to make this charge, the Warp Smith is taking Marvelman into various points of history to combat himself, and that will create enough of this pent-up energy, this kinetic force that could be used to power what needs to be powered. So we go through vignettes of him traveling through a Golden Age style story where he combats himself prior to the rest of the team flying to the space station. Which I think actually is a contradiction. I'll talk about that in a second. And then he battles himself right after Mike Moran retransforms into Marvelman in 1982. The Warp Smith is able to collect enough energy, and at this point, Marvelman is weakened. And when they go to the station, or the point where the Warp Smith is going to be conducting whatever it is they need to, in comes young Nasty Man, I think. Or is this... Who is this? Is this Kid Miracleman? It's very hard to tell from this artwork. But basically, no, it is Kid Miracleman. So already this is very out of continuity. So because the Warp Smith has collected enough of this energy, Kid Miracleman just throws away Miracleman or Marvelman, goes to combat the Warp Smith, and it ends with this gigantic explosion where the implication is the battle is over and Kid Miracleman is no more. We're going to be revealed something later on, which shows a lot of Miracleman or Marvelman, whatever we want to call him, his history isn't exactly what he thought it was, which I think puts this chapter in contradiction, especially the part where he's supposed to travel back in time to the 1950s to engage in superheroics or to prevent his enclave of people going to the space station. Anyway, with all this said, maybe it's not a contradiction. Maybe this works in continuity. I just feel it's purposeless. This is just a very confusing aside that is part of a summer special. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem. If it didn't coincide with summertime, we could have just gone on.
Yeah.
But this is an aside, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's obviously the least, the weakest entry, and it wasn't included in the Eclipse series. I want to point out, I don't know if you remember, but the Eclipse series was 16 pages long, or 16 issues long. There was one issue where something happened, and the entire issue was just Golden Age reprints. So they actually just filled an issue just to get it out for whatever reason. They could have used this story, and I believe there might have been one other chapter they didn't reprint. I could be wrong about that, but
there is another one, and I think it's collected in this Marvel edition.
Okay.
But, yeah, you know what? I don't even feel I have a lot to add to it. It's a nothing story that doesn't really do much. I don't even think Moore put that much effort into it. The prose doesn't have his usual panache to it. I just feel it's an aside.
I agree. It's probably a fill-in, right? I'm assuming it's just a fill-in. Like maybe someone wasn't hitting a deadline or something. So,
also the art doesn't touch what Leach is doing in the other books.
No, I agree. It's generic, and
I like Steve Dillon though.
No, but it's also a mixture. It's Steve Dillon, then Paul Neary, then Alan Davis. I think they switch off on 2 pages each or something.
Yeah.
But it's fine. But yeah, we can jump to the next one, and then Nice Man. Would you like to do the next chapter?
Let's try.
Okay, and just,
I'm always in awe. I'm always in awe of Adamantium. His recollection is like second to none, isn't it?
That's true. And you'll forgive me, but the pages are mixed just because of the numbering of the file. So I'll have to. But you can bear with me. Yeah. I hope. Okay.
So now that Kid Miracleman is revealed, he didn't plummet to his death, fortunately, for Mike Moran. And now all hell is breaking loose because Kid Miracleman doesn't hesitate to use or display his evil and his power. He murders a poor, innocent secretary because he can, and also because he quite enjoys doing this. So he's not just a bad guy, let me be powerful. He actually enjoys exercising his power in an evil way. So Mike Moran knows he has no choice now. He's got to switch into Miracleman, and battle has to take place. But of course, as he understands, Kid Miracleman never actually lost his powers. For all these years, he's still been this powerful character. It's just been hidden. Whereas for Mike Moran, that's not the case. He didn't have it for all these years since the big explosion. And he's like new. He's a new kid on the block in comparison to Kid Miracleman. So the roles are reversed. Kid Miracleman is no kid now. He's the big bad wolf, and Mike Moran is the innocent. So of course, Mike Moran gets his ass beaten. His eye is practically out of its socket and everything else. And he still has to pay attention to innocent bystanders. And I love an almost kind of Spider-Man touch here, almost early Ditko Lee Spider-Man, where he saves a kid, but then the mother blames him for injuring the kid because he might have broken a couple of the kid's ribs.
Right.
Yeah. So, no good deed. And so we have, a Kid Miracleman. Really, we should just call him Johnny Bates, right? Mm-hmm. I'm so glad that he's a man and not a teenager, because then otherwise we might use another term which would not be appropriate for this podcast. If you know what I mean.
No, I can't think of it. No, what is it? Just tell us.
Well, when you're a young when you're young.
Anyway, we should probably get to the end of this.
Okay, so
So anyway, yes. So
there's a oh
Miracleman is just about pummeled by Johnny Bates, and that's where we end, I believe, isn't it? Or have I overlooked something?
No, and then Johnny Bates is basically planning. Okay, now he's like, what can I do next?
Right.
I got to point out a couple of sequences in this book that I think are brilliant. The murder of the secretary is so well done. We see two parallel panels of Kid Miracleman approaching her, then picking her up, and then behind him we see Michael Moran running, and then in the third panel she explodes. In the fourth panel, she's just a skeleton. It is horrific. It's horrific. And the narration here, the prose, he looks at the charred and pulverized thing that had met the gaze of a dragon. He wants to vomit, and he thinks that could have been Liz. He looks at the tiger smile and the dragon eyes of the thing that had once been a boy called Johnny Bates. He wants to vomit, and he thinks that could have been me. It's amazing. It's so good, right?
Doesn't it make you wonder why other writers don't write or can't write like this or didn't write like this?
I think it's because they grew up reading only bad superhero comics, and Alan Moore read novels. No, but Alan Moore read novels as well, right?
But he did grow up on,
of course.
American comics.
But this goes back to my theory that Silver Age DC is actually underrated and better than Silver Age Marvel. I think that there's a reason Alan Moore and Grant Morrison and Neil Gaiman gravitated to DC. I think it's because the stuff that they were publishing was actually, even though it was aimed at a younger audience, I think it was better written. But that's a discussion for another time. But okay, I want to point out one more sequence. When the baby, that's brilliant. I mean, I appreciate the fact, I'm not saying all superheroes should do this, but the fact that it doesn't matter how strong a superhero is, if a superhuman being is handling a normal baby, there's a good chance that they can hurt it, right? So I like that little added detail of the broken ribs and then the mother blaming him. I just think that's brilliant. There's a lot more I could say about it, but Adamantium, I want to hear what you have to say about this one.
You know what? I'm going to hold off until the next recount because I feel they are in such quick succession. It basically is chapter A, chapter B. But quickly, I enjoyed it, but we'll go on.
I'll say one thing I only noticed just a few minutes ago. Between the original black and white and the reprint, in the original, it says dragons, and it says dragons fight in the meadow, their blood is black and yellow. The Book of Changes. In the reprint, they completely cut that out.
Yeah.
Interesting. Just something to think about. Anyway, okay, so yeah, we can jump to the next chapter then. I believe Nice Man, is it your turn?
No, I just did the last one.
Okay.
Oh, so Adam, it's your turn.
Okay. So this picks up exactly where we left off. Miracleman is left for dead, and then Liz is driving away from the tower that Johnny Bates owns, only to have his glowing figure just descend in front of her car, causing an accident. He is about to kill her, declaring that he already murdered her husband. But of course, Miracleman, through sheer will and heroics, manages to wake up in time to fly over and rescue Liz and continue his fight. At this point, there's media, there are police officers, there are witnesses to this battle. And in contrast to the fight that we're seeing, there are these shadowy unknown figures that are phoning each other, letting one another know they're back. This thing is happening. So this is, of course, a story beat that will be picked up on later. And this is what I really like about this battle. Miracleman doesn't actually win the fight. He's pulverized. By existing for so many years, Kid Miracleman has been able to hone his skills, abilities, and powers where Miracleman is all but dead. But it is his hubris that gets him. He declares, and now I'm going to finish him off. Me, his adoring junior protege. Me, Kid Miracleman. And that's the thing. Much like Captain Marvel, the whole way that people transform between different personas is by saying a word. And for Kid Miracle Man, it was saying the name of his mentor, Miracle Man. When he says it, his body is zapped by light and he reverts back to Johnny Bates. And this is why I'm going to call this character Kid Miracle Man, this one Johnny Bates, because Johnny Bates was essentially suspended for years. He is still a teenage boy, but one that was conscious of every horrible, deplorable thing Kid Miracle Man did. And he's basically arrested in catatonia in this horrible state of trauma, PTSD essentially. Mike Moran, or I should say Miracle Man, approaches him. He wants to yield the finishing blow, but he sees this poor kid. The kid's even mumbling the name Miracle Man, but he's not changing, indicating that the fight's probably over, that Kid Miracle Man's not going to come back. And so with that, Miracle Man takes Liz and they fly away, leaving Johnny Bates to be collected by the police. And then we get some follow-up with this shadowy cartel that looks like government agents who are enlisting someone named Mr. Cream to investigate the case of these superheroes, or as they call them, dragons, that have returned.
Go ahead.
I'm just gonna, just so I don't have to pontificate too much.
Sure.
This paired with the previous issue are great. For everything you both commented on, here the characterization is great. It is a big punch up, and as I've said, it's not my favorite mode in comics. In fact, there is one really great fight that's going to happen in this comic run later on, so this one somewhat pales in comparison. But it's the fact that Miracle Man doesn't win the fight. It's just hubris that allows him to survive this encounter with Kid Miracle Man to revert back to Johnny Bates. And the outcome, the fact that this kid, again, raising questions and themes about identity, about autonomy, is traumatized by being conscious of all these things Kid Miracle Man did in his existence, but couldn't control. It's tragic, actually. It's sad. The artwork revealing Johnny Bates' face as this damaged, traumatized kid. And then the insight, those seeds planted for what's going to happen with this shadowy organization who needs to investigate these returning superpowered beings is genius. It's great. And this is where the comic goes from really well written, pretty good, to actually becoming a classic great comic.
And before I say anything, there is one thing I forgot to say about the last chapter, and it's a great sequence where Miracle Man is flying away and he says, maybe if I hide in the cloud bank, I can buy myself some time. Can't fight him yet. I'm afraid of him. Mm-hmm. Superman would never say that. Batman would never say that. And I think that's what separates this. This is, it makes Kid Miracle Man more frightening. The fact that the hero is admitting he's afraid of him, I think it's great. Mm-hmm. This chapter, of course it's great. It's a continuation of the last issue. The art is even more, I think, like with these tiny panels, look how complex these images are. Usually in a comic where you're getting this many panels on a page, you're just going to get close-ups of faces or hands or whatever. Each one of these images is a fully rendered, fully imagined, we could call it a wide shot of a full scene. I think it's brilliant. Yeah, I love this chapter. Nice Man, what do you think?
Yeah, great stuff. I have one misgiving, which you can both clarify for me. But before I get to the misgiving, did either of you see this coming, where Johnny Bates was going to accidentally utter the words, Kid Miracle Man and change?
I didn't see it. I mean, I've read it 1,000 times, but no, I don't see it coming. I think it's pretty brilliant, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, likewise. It's been so long since the first time I read this, I wouldn't be able to say honestly.
Because that's the only thing, isn't it? I mean, he's pulverized. Miracle Man. There's nothing that can stop him. Nothing. The only thing that can stop him is this. And so thank goodness, like most bad characters, they suffer from this sin of pride, and therefore they overlook something, you know? They lose that sense of caution. All these years he knew he couldn't say this, but now he's so overwhelmed with himself, you know, so impressed with himself, so proud of himself that he slips up and utters those words. And I love the rendition of poor Johnny Bates. Don't you feel bad for him, this little kid?
Well, I mean, yes, but if I were to point out one other flaw, I can understand Miracleman not murdering him, but the fact that he just flies away and leaves him there,
I don't understand that.
Outrageous. He just murdered at least the secretary. I don't know if there were any pedestrians, but it's pretty dangerous to just leave him on his own. And also, I think Alan Moore's writing is pretty airtight, but this is a brief time where I think he might have gone back for a second draft and gone, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense, because he could just say Miracleman again and switch back. So we have Miracleman say, out like in his thought bubble, he just said my name and didn't change back. He hasn't assumed his human form for 18 years. So that's a little bit of exposition for the reader. I would have liked to have seen that maybe happen between him and Liz to make it a little bit more natural.
Maybe with the limit on the number of pages, he needed to wrap this up somehow quickly.
Could
in
be,
an American comic, I mean, they would have taken him back to some particular place,
vault,
purpose, you know, playpen or bubble, which
Arkham Asylum,
that can never escape from. You wouldn't just say, well, hey, the police will pick him up. We're off.
Right.
Yeah. Isn't that what would happen, though? Because what we're talking about, you said yourself, Mike, he just killed so many people, so many civilians, probably so many more that he didn't know in his history. There's anger that he feels. He knows the danger, but he's also scared. He's damaged, and he sees what is a child in front of him who is not the murderer. There's a lot of conflict. This is him escaping because he can't face what he needs to do. And that's going to be a theme that we return to later on in Miracleman, particularly with the character of Johnny Bates. I think this actually is genius because this sets up, as I think you both know the story point I'm talking about that's going to happen later on, that is so crucial, this failing of Miracleman because he couldn't bring himself to do a thing. And we won't spoil too much for, going forward on this, but I'm going to put my line in the sand for this. I think this was necessary and a very important turn of events. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I even though I said like in an American comic book he'd be whisked off to some special created bubble thing, I wouldn't have liked that either. That's too neat, really. Here he is now in this special padded cell, and it is a bit too neat.
Okay, we got a lot to talk about. We're going to jump to number 7, which has, in my opinion, the best cover yet. I'm not sure who painted this, but I love it. But anyway, okay, so I will do this one. So now we have, again, this is like Nice Man keeps saying, this is a comic for adults. It's a very sophisticated way of telling a story. Now we're jumping to a completely different group of characters here. And they're talking about how they've hired Evelyn Cream, and we don't quite know. They're just kind of giving hints to what they're talking about, who they're talking about, and what it is they're planning. But once we have an introductory scene, we cut away to another sequence that's one of my favorites, where Miracleman and Liz drive out to the country, and again, 13-year-old Mike is reading this, and he's loving it because she pulls out some American comics and decides that they're going to do some research. And she's like, well, I'm going to figure out what superpowers you have. So she sits down and she says, okay, I've made a list. I'll check off what you can do. You can fly. You're very strong and invulnerable. Do you have super breath? He's like, super breath? And again, as a kid, I'm loving this because, as we've pointed out, nobody had done this before 1982. Nobody. We cut away to a sequence, another sequence I love, where now we're kind of getting the status quo of Johnny Bates. He's kind of comatose, but in his imagination, he's seeing Kid Miracleman as a separate personality that's talking to him, and he's kind of cowering on the ground while almost like this abusive father is standing over him, yelling at him, and it's great. I love it. And by the way, that is where I believe have either of you read the Sin Eater saga in Spider-Man? Okay, it's one of the best Spider-Man stories I've ever read. It's by Peter David and Sal Buscema, and he kind of cops this whole motif, you could say, where Sin Eater has a separate personality and he sees him as a separate personality in the room with him. It's pretty cool. Anyway, so then we cut back to Miracleman and Liz. He's testing out his powers, showing that he's strong, he's invulnerable. And she makes a really interesting point. She says, well, okay, yes, you're strong, but it can't be because you have super tough skin. It's more like a force field. Because when this giant rock landed on you, it should have driven you into the ground. So she's actually using physics and saying, no, the way that your powers work is not the way that they've been explained in, superhero comics in the past. Yeah, right. So then we cut away, and this is a great chapter because we're following basically 2 or 3 different subplots here. We cut away to Mr. Cream, who's walking into this hospital, and then we cut back and we find out that Liz is pregnant with Miracleman's baby, not Michael's baby, but Miracleman's baby. We cut back. Now, I actually read this story several times. I don't remember who this guy is in the hospital bed.
That's the original terrorist who was damaged after Michael Moran initially changed into Miracleman. With that flash of light, it killed his eardrums and seared his skin. Yeah.
Okay. So you know how sometimes when you get older and you're trying to think back to things you read as a kid and you can't remember, did I read that in X-Men? Did I read it in Batman? You don't remember? As I got older, I realized almost all those good memories came from Miracleman because this sequence is brilliant, and I'm sure it's been imitated by other people before, but this is genius. We have comics, which is a silent medium, but this entire sequence is based on the fact that this guy is deaf. And so because of that, Evelyn Cream has to write out his questions for him. And he basically says, look, I know that you're deaf and you can't hear me, but I just got to ask you some questions. And he tells him he's from the Spook Show. And so then the guy says, oh, you're going to kill me, aren't you? He's like, you have my word. I'm not going to kill you. Just answer my questions. And then he says, okay. And so then the guy says, so I want to know who it was that did this to you. And he describes him. He says, okay, I believe you. What did he look like? And he says, oh, middle-aged guy, 45-ish, big bloke, had a crew cut. Cuts back. Oh, crap. Sorry about that, guys. Jeez. Oh, now I got to get rid of this. Oh, my gosh. Okay, there we go. Then it cuts back to him from a list. He circles Michael Moran's name, which is brilliant storytelling. Then the next page, he writes down, remember I promised not to kill you? Yeah. I was lying, Steve. And look at that eyeball. Then it cuts to a silent sequence of him holding his hand over the guy's mouth. And in the background, we see the hands of a clock. We see the passage of time, and we see that the guy's dead now. And then he walks out, and that's the end of the story. Brilliant. I love it. Nice, man. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting because if you think about how Alan Moore had to plan this out, he knew that he was going to reintroduce Mike Moran as Miracleman, and then what if Kid Miracleman never lost his powers and now is corrupt and evil, and that ties things together well, but how's he going to move on from that? And an interesting kind of swerve to create this Cream guy with the shiny, he's got blue colored metallic teeth. Is that right?
Sapphires. They're like gems, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And so he's quite a distinctive character. And it's good to follow up with poor Johnny Bates. I love the artwork because I'm not sure I've ever felt more sympathy for a character than I felt for the kid Johnny Bates, saying, all this. He's having to struggle with this shithead, superpowered Kid Miracleman. And his face just says, oh, don't you feel bad for the kid? He's an innocent victim.
Yeah, of course. But I also know that he's Kid Miracleman, so.
No, he's not, Mike. And I think this is where the book
Sure.
really is laying it on the table. These are not the same characters. Mike Moran is not Miracle Man.
Sure.
Johnny Bates is not Kid Miracle Man. And, for that, I do have sympathy. Just like by the end, hopefully we'll get to the end of this by the night's end, but I'm going to have a lot of sympathy for Mike Moran by the time we're done this comic run.
But you know
Right.
what, though? Because we know what Kid Miracle Man has done, though, of course I feel sympathy for Johnny Bates, but I think it's insane to leave him unguarded like this, especially because we know what happens and what he's capable of. But I'll just leave it at that.
Well, they could have shown this to Jim Shooter in the mid '80s and said, "Look, you don't have to kill Jean Grey.
Oh.
She's innocent.
Right.
She's
Right.
innocent. So leave her alone and do something to the Phoenix character." Anyway, so yeah, I like all this stuff. Just towards the end, can we just jump ahead there? Oh yeah, to the killing of the guy. I thought, well, now that's something I did see coming. The thing by saying Johnny Bates saying Kid Miracle Man, oh, what caught me a bit off surprise, and I thought how great that was. But this one, I mean, I didn't think for a moment that this Cream character was going to keep his word.
Sure, but it still makes for a freaking good scene, don't you think?
I was taken out of it a little bit, I will admit, because even though the rest of the comics are very consistent, I'm just imagining he's taking like a couple minutes at a time writing down these pages. Can you imagine? This is like...
I know, like when he says, oh, by the way, you remember when I said I wasn't going to kill you?
You see the clock on the wall, right?
I was like, yeah, I know.
So I tried to figure out what time was it. So it was almost 7, and by the time he's finished, is it almost 7?
I think it's
No,
the second.
it's
It's
8.
only the second. Oh,
That's
wait
the
a
second
minute.
hand, yeah.
In hand, it's 8:33 or so. So he keeps his hand on his mouth there for about 10 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, it's funny. You're right. Why would he wouldn't need to? It'd only be like a minute. But whatever.
Mhm.
Oh
Yeah,
well.
10 minutes. But even that, what a nice little touch that they bothered to do that, right?
Yep. And what's funny is I remember I've read stories where artists, they basically admit that they kind of run out of pages. Like I remember, I think it was Jim Lee or Wills Portasio, where they would the first few pages would be all big panels. Then when they got to the end, they realized, oh my gosh, I've run out of pages. I got to squeeze everything into these last 2 pages. I'm sorry, but when you're laying out your pages, you should be planning like, okay, well, I know I have to do this on page 22, so I'm going to leave myself a splash page and I'm going to pace myself, and here's where I'm going to hit my climaxes. And I mean, it's like you said, Paul, why aren't people learning from this? This is 1982. All writers should do this. They should all be planning, okay, this is my cliffhanger, so I'm going to build to that. But they don't. They just kind of let pages run out, right?
But it was well established that doing the Marvel method, as Archie Goodwin said one time, can be very serendipitous because you get back more than you even imagined, and it adds a quirk to the story that you hadn't thought of, and it's serendipitous. But then you have the downside of that is like Steve Englehart said about Gene Colan, is that you with him you have to plot page by page, because if you just give a general plot, he runs out of pages and then has to rush it at the end. So Gene Colan used to apparently regularly kind of screw it up, and therefore Steve Englehart and others had to give him page by page plot synopsis. And there was even a Jack Kirby one time where he got it completely messed up, and the resolution came like 1/3 of the way into the next issue, and then at this point the new story began.
Even the Galactus trilogy starts halfway through number 48 and ends halfway through number 50. That's terrible pacing, right? Anyway, just a thought.
Well, anyway, yes.
Okay, so do we have anything else to say about this one, Adamantium?
Nope.
Okay, so we can jump to the next one. I lost track of whose turn it is. Did I do the last one? Oh.
I can go for this one if you guys are okay
Sure.
with it.
Okay.
So this starts with Miracleman returning home and converting back to Mike Moran, pardon me. And we see what a great contrast. Initially, his face is the serene, view, the serene sort of visage of Miracleman, and it converts to this downtrodden, schlubby, very uncertain look of Mike Moran. And you can tell he's someone who is going through an identity crisis. He's someone who describes his uncertainty of who is he, who is Miracleman, and is what Liz doing technically having an affair? How can he ever stack up to this man who is a literal ideal of perfection? It raises a lot of questions and themes. And I think this also can be taken away from just the narrative. It's a great reflection on how people themselves often fail to live up to standards within relationships, within any sort of social dynamics. And this is a great extrapolation of that. So to get away from this headache and all of this stuff that Moran is going through, he goes back to work because he's a reporter and he's pursued by Mr. Cream. He goes inside the office, he has a little exchange with his editor, and as he goes to leave, he goes into the elevator where there is a woman saying, "Oh, I just need to get out of his bottle. Could you please hold my baby?" He does, and this is all set up. Evelyn Cream goes, "Mr. Moran?" When he goes, "Yeah? How are you going to change into Miracleman without roasting that innocent little baby the way you roasted that terrorist?" And then he proceeds to shoot Michael Moran, and he fades to dark. And I love this line, great prose from Alan Moore. After all this thought about the darkness and the encroaching cold that he's feeling, there's a final question: why sapphire teeth? Which is a great way to end that on.
Yep. Yeah, he thinks I'm a superhero, and he thinks nothing can hurt me, and he thinks what a stupid way to die. And finally, why sapphire teeth? It's great. You're right. This is an interesting chapter because not much happens. It's only, did I miss pages?
No.
I don't think so. No, it's unusually short. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, maybe not 7. It's either it's a little, maybe a few pages short, but it's also just kind of a transition chapter. But I think it's good. I mean, we should also point out this art is by Alan Davis. It's no longer Garry Leach.
I would argue this is one of the most important chapters because this is where the theme happens. The divide between Michael Moran and Miracleman becomes perfectly articulated. To me, this is what the book is all about, at least until we get to some later chapters. But I think this is one of my favorites, honestly, of book 1.
Well, I will say that I don't think Nice Man's going to agree with me, but I do think that on a technical level, Alan Davis is a better artist than Garry Leach.
Well, Alan Davis said that he was a bargain basement Garry Leach. He said he was just simply doing his best to
yes,
copy Garry Leach because Garry Leach was so good. He just wanted to keep it going.
Especially the faces, you can clearly see he's copying Garry Leach's depiction of Michael Moran very closely. But I think the art in this one's great. I think Mr. Cream is a great villain. This sequence with the baby is brilliant. The ending is great. The storytelling here, from the point of view of Miracleman, Michael Moran looking up at the baby as his consciousness fades, is great. I think it's brilliant. Anything else?
No.
Should we? Okay, we can jump to the next one. I can take over.
Go ahead.
Okay, Warrior number, what issue is this? 9. Okay, again, brilliant storytelling. We have now leapt forward in the chronology past the explanation for what's going on. Miracleman is now attacking the Spook Show, right? The headquarters of the Spook Show. While that's happening, we're cutting away to 3 characters from the Spook Show, talking about the project and what's going on. Then we cut back in time, picking up where we left off last issue, where now we find out that it turns out Mr. Cream did not kill Michael Moran. Those were not bullets. They were, what is it called?
Tranquilizers. Yeah.
Tranquilizers, right? And he basically says, look, you have information and I want the information, so I'm keeping you alive. I want to find out what the Spook Show is. And while he's doing that, he also tells him flat out, he says, you gained your powers in 1954. This was a result of an experiment termed Project Zarathustra, carried out by a branch of Air Force intelligence known as the Spook Show. And this is where he learns that there's more to his backstory than he previously realized, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, I was sorry, guys. I was doing the color one. I'll jump back to the black and white one. So anyway, and then we're cutting back and forth to Miracleman going through these guards and just wiping them all out, cross-cutting with the three spook show guys explaining that they continued these experiments and created another superhuman, which we're going to find out about at the end of the story. As Miracleman is going through these guards, Mr. Cream is trying to warn him to be careful because there's barriers, there's people that could stop him, and Michael Moran is not worried. He goes through these people like butter, wipes them all out, makes his way into this headquarters, and then we get to the end of the story and almost comically discover that the subject of the continued experiments by the spook show is a character called Big Ben, which I thought Alan Moore had created for this, but apparently was a pre-existing. Was he from the 50s or?
I don't know.
Yeah, but he was a pre-existing character, and I believe Des Skin forced him to incorporate him into the story, so he kind of, as a favor, did that, and I think the results are mixed, but we'll get to that later. But I thought this issue structurally was brilliant. Nice man, what do you think?
Didn't we learn in the previous podcast that Big Ben was created by a writer who preceded him on Captain Britain? And then he made good use of him.
I thought that was. Are you thinking about that Miracleman or the Doctor Who character?
No.
Okay.
When we did Captain Britain, remember?
Yeah, but then he would be a Marvel character.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I don't think so. But anyway, we refuse to do research. But he's definitely a pre-existing character. But in any case, what'd you think of this issue? Nice man.
I mean, good stuff. Because again, I think after what happened at the very beginning with Johnny Bates and Kid Miracleman, difficult to move on from that. And I think Alan Moore has moved things along well, considering. And I like these characters. But again, Big Ben is a ridiculous character in a way with his bowler hat and his umbrella. So, of course, Alan Moore handles him in just the right way. Yeah. And that is never taking him seriously.
Right. Adamantium?
Agreed. The reveal, the slow unveiling of what Miracleman's past actually is incredible. And it's going to take place over the next subsequent 2 issues. We actually find out a better understanding of who he is and why he has these memories. But this is such a great slow burn. And you know what? Big Ben, a stupid fun character to include at the end as just a little inkling of there's still some fun to be had in this dark, serious story. So I appreciate him. I also appreciate the fact that Miracleman is often touted incorrectly as being the first British comic book superhero. So let's get the most stereotypically British superhero we can have paired against him, which would be Big Ben, the man with no time for crime.
Great. Right. It's a great thing. No time for crime. You have to love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's another Golden Age callback, right? Either way. Even if it was an original character, it's brilliant either way. So, okay. So we're going to jump to the next one. This is number 10. I don't remember whose turn it is. Is it my turn?
Oh, we can all do it.
Okay, sure.
So what's going on here, Mike?
What's going on? So if I remember, this is so we're jumping into the fallout of Miracleman's attack on the headquarters. We cut over to Miracleman having a fist fight with Big Ben, and then as they're fighting, we're realizing that Big Ben has kind of been programmed to believe that Miracleman is a character called, what is it, Major Molotov?
Yeah, and Soviet guy.
Right, and they're flashing, like he's kind of having memories of the Crimson Finger, the Sponge, Dr. Panic, Phantom Robot, Phineas Fisk, like all these Golden Age type characters. Meanwhile, we cut over to Liz, and I don't remember what happens here. What is she thinking here? Someone else can jump in.
She's essentially just
Oh,
mulling over the illustration that she's making, along with this fear that she has over Miracle Man, wondering what is this baby they're going to have? Is
right.
it her and Michael's baby? Is it her and Miracle Man's baby? Is this baby going to be some sort of god, or is it going to be a pile of goo coming out of her? The fear is palpable. She doesn't know. And I love the ending line of that page where she's looking at the illustration and just says, the perspective on that chair is wrong. Really, that deflection that she's going through, this is such a horrific existential problem that she's facing. She can't even focus on it. She has to focus on the minutia of this illustration. And then it cuts back to the battle with Big Ben and Miracle Man. And I love this. After all of these failed attempts Big Ben has to best him, Miracle Man just gives this very annoyed, upturned gaze at him with his lip and just swats him away. And that's
So
the
isn't
end.
it really, sorry, Adam, isn't it really something that here's a comic book? You've got all this action, fight, action, boom, boom, boom going on, and it's completely and utterly meaningless because Miracle Man isn't affected by anything. This is all about Big Ben. And so now we're moving along, like you say, to the point where it's like, okay, enough of this. We've had pages and pages of action, of him trying to clubber me and this and that. Let me just flick him away with my hand and boom, there he goes. You know, it's a great fight scene because there's no fight.
Exactly.
It's all about Big Ben. And so we're going to end up sympathetic about Big Ben.
And yet it's great foreshadowing for what we're about to learn with these ideas, this programming Big Ben has. Because after he flings him away, he lands right in front of Evelyn Cream, who just looks down and walks by. And then, oh, nice man, if you want to just wrap up the last couple pages.
Go on.
I'll go on then. Basically, he catches Evelyn catches up with Miracle Man, and he just rips the door off this hanger that contains the secrets of Project Zarathustra. Project Zarathustra. And inside is a screen depicting that original Golden Age image of Miracle Man on a video player and an alien with a bifurcated skeleton. So it's melded skeletons together. And you just hear Miracle Man go, "Great God." And that's the penultimate chapter for this book.
Mm-hmm. We also have to point out there's a little bit of expansion on Evelyn Cream's character. Was it this issue?
Yeah, there was some internal dialogue.
Yeah, a little bit. So they're fleshing him out a little bit, but
yeah, true.
Which makes him a much more interesting character. But yeah, again, even considering that this character was kind of shoehorned in by Des Skin, it still is a nice little side story because it does tie in with the theme of explaining these 1950s characters with these fictional backstories that we'll find out about in the next chapter. We don't want to talk too much about that, but yeah, this is a very interesting issue. And again, it's like you said earlier, Adam, is like these are not really like these are chapters, but it's part of a greater narrative. So it is. This one is kind of hard to judge on its own as a story because it's really kind of like the middle section of something else. But as usual, there's some great art in here as well. And here we get this big reveal. And that's the second last chapter. So now we're going to jump right to, this is the last one, right?
Before we do, before we do.
Sure,
so
okay.
On that very last panel, on that last page, isn't it great? We've got that wonderful teaser link up with the image that we said was so haunting from the, when they ended the 1950s episode and they showed us that face of Miracle Man, smiling, handsome, and got closer, closer, closer. And here is that exactly the same image right there on the screen. So we kind of know what's going to come.
Yep, it's great. You're right. All right, so now here we go. This is the conclusion of book one. So I'll start it off. So, So we I think we're yes. Oh, so now again, it's not a typical comic book. Now we're just jumping into a different narrative tool. We're listening. Miracle Man and Mr. Cream are listening to the tapes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like tapes that are explaining, kind of like documenting what these scientists were doing over the years. And so we're listening to the tapes, and they're basically explaining it to us. And what it is back in the 1950s, they came across these aliens, right?
Yep.
And they figured out that they could clone these aliens, or they could create human clones of these aliens, kind of like hybrids. And as this is going on, we're jumping forward to after Miracle Man has found out the secret. And then we're jumping back to them hearing the explanation. And so we're getting the origin of Miracle Man here. And we can see here the scientists watching over, and we're seeing how they're creating basically clones. And they're choosing the three different people, which is Michael Moran, Dickie Dauntless, and Johnny Bates. And the explanation they give is because their fathers were all in the Air Force, and Miracle Man makes the point that he should have thought of that. He should have put that together. Obviously, hindsight's 2020. We're cutting back to them explaining Big Ben, about how he was a kind of a failed Superman. He didn't work out quite as well as the Miracle family did. In the meantime, in the present, we're seeing that we're seeing, what's his name? Big Ben's face as he's been beat up by Miracle Man, listening as Miracle Man is also getting the information at the same time. And we're cutting back and finding out how they kind of created these, using the technology that they discovered, they figured out a way to have these beings that could switch spaces I think it's called infraspace, switch spots in infraspace with these superhumans, which is something that Liz alluded to. She figured it out earlier, right? She said, I think you're actually two different bodies that are switching spaces, and maybe the other body is somewhere else, and when this body's here, it's aging, and the other one isn't. So she kind of figured it out. So it was foreshadowing of this explanation. Mm-hmm. And then on this page, this is where we find out that they were given kind of a, what's it called? Like a, help me out, guys. What's that called?
They were given a false memory, essentially.
Yeah, false memory.
In order to control the Miracle family, what they did was they decided the best way to make sure they follow our agenda is to brainwash them so that they believe they're these Golden Age heroes. So we're going to put these false memories in them so we can give them missions. We can make assignments. The idea is we'll tell them to go fight Dr. Malicious in Bulgaria, but Dr. Malicious might actually just be an opposing country, but they don't know. These are false memories implanted in them. It's a way to weaponize and use them. And what's also great is they find confusion helps control the Miracle family. So they'll say these fanciful superhero stories will often contradict each other in terms of continuity, in terms of even how characters act, and that aids in their confusion and control over these characters, which is a very brilliant way for Alan Moore to explain the contradictions that happened in a decade plus of continuity for the Marvel Man / Miracle Man comics. That was really brilliant. And then ultimately what happens is it's revealed the creator of the Zarathustra project was actually a fellow named Dr. Emil Garganza. Now, Garganza in Miracle Man's memory was like the Lex Luthor or the Doctor Doom. It was his primary adversary, this kind of dwarfin mad scientist. But here we see the reason that he's embedded and part of his memory is because he was the progenitor. He was the creator of this experiment. And I love this. As he says, and I quote, providing them in the process an utterly manufactured identity, which is ours to manipulate at will, to wit, the identity of a children's comic book character. And I love this for many reasons. On one hand, it's a great explanation in universe for how they can explain this continuity not happening, how they can deconstruct the mythos of a superhero and also play into that notion of the power fantasy that so many people imbibe in with superhero stories that don't think about it critically. It's a means of control. It's a means of brokering power by having these power fantasies infused into these people. And what we see is an explanation here given that's not outright stated. Miracleman, with his distance from this program, he didn't quite continue being brainwashed. These fantasies continued existing in Kid Miracleman, and never outright stated, but the implication is these power fantasies drove him mad, sociopathic, and unempathetic to human beings. What a brilliant mechanism. And again, unstated, just implied.
And honestly, I don't even know if I picked up on that. So that's how brilliant it is. I didn't even notice. But anyway, then we get the final sequence where we see what Big Ben thinks is happening, and it's brilliant and sad. He's imagining that he's defeated Major Molotov, and now he's being joined by Jack Ketch and Owlwoman from the Bulldog Brigade. And then in reality, we see it's actually two like psychiatrists, you could say, and he thinks that he's been given an ultra vest to take away the effects of the brain beam he's been exposed to, but in reality, he's just being given a straitjacket, and he thinks he's being led to an owl car, but it's actually a truck, right? And then now we realize this ties back into the very beginning of the story, about the trucks driving down the highway. Some carry breakfast cereal, some carry ball bearings, some are empty, and some are not. And that's the wrap up of book 1 of Miracleman, and it's brilliant.
Yeah, this is what is.
I'm speechless because, I mean, Watchmen is a few years later, and Watchmen is even more well thought out and complex, but there are things about Miracleman that I do like better. Like, it's kind of closer to my heart, probably because I read it first, but it's also, I just love it. I think it's brilliant. Nice Man, what do you think?
All of the above.
I think the other thing I want to point out too is that the whole idea of taking an existing character and telling you everything you believe is a lie, which Alan Moore did with Swamp Thing, right? Which was then imitated over and over again by other writers with other characters. It really does start here. I mean, it's one thing, over the years, Superman might find out a new detail about his origin, or Batman might find out something different about his origin. But I believe this is the first time where everything was proven to be wrong. We have a special guest here.
Miracle Woman.
There you go.
It's my bedtime.
Uh-oh, I guess that means, what perfect timing. We just finished reviewing. Okay. Adam, do you have anything else to say before we wrap up?
Nope, don't want to keep anyone away from their bedtime, but it's a great comic, and I look forward to reading the next chapter when we have a chance to.
All right. And Nice Man, you have the last word.
I'm speechless.
All right. Okay. Well, guess what, folks? One last thing to say is in the next episode, we will be reviewing Zenith, Book 2. So be sure to join us for that. All of our episodes are available on our website. I want to thank you guys for joining us again, and I will see you in a week. Komoda.